You are in the right place, everybody, if you have come to do the professional development on networking. My name is Carrie Knutson, and I'm your host tonight. And I'm so glad you've joined me for this. I am one of the speakers for outside your organization called the Denver Training Group. And the Denver Training Group is offering a series. It's a 4-part series. And so far, you've had 2 sessions. One with Dr. Shannon Andrus is the other presenter. And she has covered already resumes, was her first talk. And then she did cover letters, which was the second talk. Now tonight you've got me, Carrie Knutson, and I am going to speak on networking and interviewing. And these 4 together, we're calling the 4-part skill series. We're calling it like steps to succeed. And it's everything outside your program that may help you as you're looking for internships, as you're thinking about applying for things, as you're thinking about making connections for jobs and other opportunities, things that will help you, tangibly help you make those next steps. So these are going to be recorded and they're going to be on the website, so you can download them. And if you've missed one of them, they'll be available to you in that library. So tonight we're talking about networking. And the reason I'm talking to you about that is I am actually a therapist by training, and I study a lot of human development issues. Like, why do people do what they do? What makes people successful? How does communication work and not work sometimes? And how can we be better at it? And so I developed this talk on networking to help you think about how can we take, sometimes we have knowledge about a certain subject, but it might be hard to connect with people or to further what we want to do by connecting with people. And why is it hard for people to network? So today we're going to talk all about networking, what it is, what it isn't, and give you some tools to help you be really successful at it. So you're in the right place if that's what you're here for. Okay. So when we think about networking, it can mean so many things. And tonight we're going to cover a lot of these things, but basically I feel like networking gets a bad rap because you think like, I have to go to some place and hand out business cards and be awkward. And it really is about a lot about connecting with other people. And it is about doing it in an authentic way that feels good to you. So when we think about why networking is important, a majority of job openings are not advertised at all. And even if they are, there's more work going on behind the scenes with internal candidates or people who know people. And really, most positions are filled through word of mouth, or another way for saying that is networking. Oh, I know a guy, or do you know somebody? Think about how you even get these things in your own life met. Does anyone know anyone who knows someone who does? So I know a guy. So when you think about that, it can be a lot of that same idea with opportunities for not only education, but jobs. So when you think about what networking is, it's just the process of making connections and building relationships. That's all it is. Making connections with other people and building relationships and connections that help you on whatever path that you're on. And you'll be doing networking really through your whole life. It's not just to get a specific job. Sometimes it helps in advancing your career or your educational pursuits. What classes should I take, or what an internship should I get? So it's really all about doing this activity and continuing to do it for quite a while. So when you think, why do we need network? Why do we connect? Well, human beings are social creatures. We are social creatures. And the minute we're born, we're social. We make eye contact. We're social. And when people say, well, I'm not social because I'm an introvert, introvert doesn't mean that. All introvert means is you get your energy from being by yourself. And all extrovert means is you get your energy from being around other people. So it doesn't have anything to do with skills, abilities, smarts, anything else. It's just where you get your energy from. So you're still a social creature. We still crave social connections, and we are here to connect. And we do this in all sorts of ways. And when we think about the ways we connect with people, a lot of it is in our relationships. Whenever we're doing anything, we're creating relationships, even with people that we don't know. And I'll ask you to make sure you're muted, just to make sure that your voice doesn't, or your side conversations don't get on here, okay? When you're thinking about how we connect with people, we're creating relationships all the time. Even if we don't know somebody, we can still create a relationship with them. Have you ever had someone that you don't know make your day awesome or awful just by a comment that they made or something that they did or didn't do? Like we're a lot in relationships with people we may not even know or interact with all the time. Also, when we think about how we show up to make connections, we're always communicating. We are always involved in communication, whether that be verbally or non-verbally. So anytime we're connecting with other people, we're creating relationships and we're communicating. And another word for that is soft skills. Like, do you have, like, when you think about what you're doing in those connections, are they good or not? Has to do with your soft skills. Some of those soft skills might include, like, do you know how to give a good handshake? Do you give good eye contact? Are you approachable in your body language or not? Like the soft skills of like, how do you get to know someone? How do you approach them? Are you an approachable person? And another word for soft skills, I say, is networking. How are we connecting with people all the time? And so this is an important thing to think about. Networking isn't something you don't know how to do. You do it all the time. And the goal is to be more effective at it so you can not only get things you need, but also give people things that they might need. So networking is all about making connections that matter. And when you think about you being at the center of your networking kind of group and all the people you can network with, it's just about building connections with people who can help you achieve your goals. And that can be personally or professionally. When you think about your network, it's all the people you connect with that could potentially help you. And for some of you, the connection is, yes, I just want to find a job. I want to use my network to find a job. But also past that, you may want to use your network to advance your career and help you as you move along your career. You may also use your network to end up growing a business. And maybe you feel like you want to do a startup or connect in another way or become an entrepreneur. Or you may want to use your network to join a community of like-minded people or people who are working on something specific. And your network can help you do all of these things. If you think about it in a really intentional way, your network can help you throughout your entire life, personally and professionally. So when you think about what is networking for, well, is it just to grow my network? Am I just trying to meet people to grow my network, or am I trying to build relationships with people? The answer is you're doing both. You're growing your network, so you're making connections, and you're also building relationships. People do things for other people. And when you think about being in relationship with them, it is like, do I feel I have a common interest with that person? Was that person seems like they're proactive? Are they interesting? Like, you're building relationships. Do they like what I like? Do they have different opinions? What kind of relationship am I having with them? And when you, at the end of the day, networking is an important key really to help you get ahead in life and your career. And so instead of being anxious about it, in my work as a therapist, I know that like lots of people have social anxiety or get anxious about I want to get a new job. So it means I have to put myself out in a way I'm not comfortable with and network. And really, when you think about it, no, this is something I'm going to do for the rest of my life, personally, professionally, make connections that help me make my life better, that help me move forward in different ways. That's all you're doing. And so again, when you think about you being the center of all your networks, it's not just what you know in terms of how smart you are. A lot of times it's who you know. Who can connect you to someone who knows it? Who knows someone who has information on this? Who knows the better way to make this happen? And so part of increasing your network is to think, okay, who do I know that could help me along my path? Or how can I put myself in situations where I can meet people that can help me along my path? And when you think about networking, it used to be like, just go to an event and give out business cards and think about networking. But really now it's so much more refined. You can network digitally. You can be on social media and network digitally. You can network in person, which is another fabulous way to do it. You can also do networking that is more formal, where everyone is going to a place specifically to network. And you can do it in informal ways as well. And informal ways. And informal ways could be just like people you randomly meet. Like for me, I meet people all the time, have random conversations about what we do, and end up getting opportunities based on those conversations. I'm a therapist, and I'm also a professional speaker, and I travel all over the place speaking and talking about applied psychology and how we can make our lives better through using psychology. And so I'll be like at an airport or something like that. And at one time I struck up a conversation with someone. We were in baggage claim, and the man says, "What do you do?" I said, "I'm a professional speaker and a therapist." "What do you do?" He's like, "I'm the head of HR." While we were waiting for our bags, we had this amazing conversation. At the end, he's like, "Can you give me your card? We're always looking for speakers." And that was an unplanned, informal, event, but I got a gig out of that conversation at baggage claim. So you never know who you're going to talk to and what it's going to lead to and how that can show up in your life. So when you think about networking, it can happen in a lot of different ways. And that's important to think about. A lot of opportunities you may not think as networking could be networking. And it might be talking to a professor after a class about something you're interested in and saying, do you know someone else I could talk to about this? Or a referral for a book or an article, or talking to someone about a conference that they're going to that you might be interested in. It doesn't have to be formal, get in a business suit and go to an event necessarily. Really, what we're doing when we're networking is we're connecting with others in meaningful and productive ways. So we're not just there to like, do you have a job for me or anything like that? We want to connect in meaningful ways. We want to talk to people about what they're interested in and what we're interested in. We also want to communicate with awareness. We want to know why we're there, what we have to say, what our body language and tone might be saying, and how we're showing up. We're communicating with awareness. We're also cultivating listening skills. In networking, it's so important to be able to listen to other people, what they have to offer, what they're interested in, what they want. And so it's not just a one-way street. So cultivating listening skills is actually a big part of networking. And then also when you think about networking, oh, sorry, my computer is frozen, is create relationships that matter. Creating relationships that matter mean that you are being genuine, you are being authentic with people. You're not just like, again, passing out business cards to whomever. You're thinking about making connections with human beings that matter. And when you think when people have a hard time with networking, we think, okay, why is it difficult? Why is it so hard for people to network? And you might be in that category when you're like, just because it's hard for me. And there's a lot of well-meaning advice that makes it hard, but there's also these reasons. Most people have a fear of the unknown when they go into a networking event or talk about it. They're like, well, what's going to happen? Who's going to be there? How am I supposed to be? I've never done this before. If you've never done something before, it can be really scary. So fear of the unknown makes it hard. Also, usually people feel that somehow they are not enough. So I know this isn't proper English, but I call it not enoughness. Like somehow if I were more experienced or had this credential, then I could go to this networking event, or then I could talk about this to people, but I'm just not enough. Most people feel like for whatever reason, they're not enough. And they think that networking is also only for extroverts, that if you're going to network, you have to be an extrovert. And that is absolutely not true. It is for everybody. And then there's also the fear of rejection. What if no one talks to me? What if I'm not interesting? What if people shun me? And most of that stuff is just in our heads, but it plays out in situations pretty loudly when we get in circumstances where we're not necessarily comfortable or things that are new to us. Our brain tends to like amplify the things we're scared of, and fear of rejection is a big fear. Also, when we think about like why people have a hard time with networking, it could just be tiring. For some people who aren't used to putting themselves out there, who don't see that as natural, it can be kind of exhausting. And that can in your mind be like, well, if it's tiring, I shouldn't do it. It's tiring because sometimes you have to practice doing things to get better at it. Sometimes you have to put ourselves out there and realize this is going to make me a little bit tired. So we need to take care of myself and other parts of my life so that I can have the energy for this. And then also, so for some people, it's the wrong format. So for some of us, big conferences are great and meet a lot of people in that way is great. And others, if you're like, oh, I can't stand the idea of doing that, or going to a round table, or for some of us going to like a happy hour. We would rather be in more of an academic setting than in more social. Maybe you feel awkward. So sometimes we have to think about what format best fits me. Like, where am I the most comfortable? Because there's so many ways to network in big venues and small and formal and informal. So it's important to think about what format might fit you best. So if you're having a hard time networking, it may be the format. It may not be you. Okay. So when we think about all these things on top of that, what I find, and again, in my work as a therapist, is that a lot of people fall into the confidence trap. And the confidence trap looks like this. It's like this idea that we're supposed to just have confidence and do things like when people say, well, just put yourself out there. And again, this is well-meaning advice that sounds good, but is actually not helpful. So sometimes you might hear people say, You just have to have confidence. You just have to put yourself out there. You just have to seize every opportunity and just keep trying. Or you have to be the kind of person that makes strong eye contact and come up as really like trying to connect, use that strong eye contact. Or maybe you're a person who they'll say, use your voice and posture and gestures, come across in a certain way, like act as if this is, that you have confidence, like show up and use your voice in a certain way. Or maybe they'll say, be really likable and interesting and thoughtful. And you're like, well, what if think I am, but maybe I'm not, or that's a tall order to be all those things. And then people say with networking, have it all together. You might think I have to be all perfect. I have to have myself together. I have to show up really polished. And then sometimes people say, well, fake it till you make it, just fake it. And what's wrong with all of this, although it sounds kind of, encouraging in some ways, it encourages you to go out there in ways that aren't authentic to who you are. You don't always have to throw yourself out there. Sometimes just going at a smaller pace and doing something like that where you just start is enough. You don't have to seize every opportunity. You just have to seize some opportunities. And how you show up with your gestures and your eye contact and how you are as an interesting person has to be authentic to you, not who you think you have to be. Because being fake isn't interesting. Being fake isn't it makes you memorable. And also then you have to remember, how do I show up when I'm being fake versus when I'm being me? And you being you is way more interesting than you being someone you think you have to be. So when you put this all together, a lot of people will play this game. Well, if only I had this, then I could be confident. If only this happened, then I would be confident. And if only is, again, a trick that your mind plays to keep you thinking in the future, things will get better. It's to keep you from acting in the moment because you're scared or you're anxious. And when you think about this idea of having confidence, usually we say, I can have confidence or I could be authentic. I could have confidence or I could be vulnerable. I could be confident or be relatable, or I could have confidence and be human. And human just means messy and awkward, like we all are. So a lot of times we have to pick between these things. And I disagree with this. I think that you can actually have confidence and break down that wall. And I think you can break down the wall and still be authentic, vulnerable, relatable, and human. I think you're more interesting when you're authentic. I think vulnerability helps us make connections when we're honest about things. When we're relatable, people remember that when we can relate to them. And our humanness is how we all show up in different and unique ways. And you could still have confidence and be yourself. And what I find with people when they're like looking to build their confidence, taking action is one of the best things you can do to build confidence, but it's actually a loop. So when you have some confidence, it helps you take action. And then when you take action, it builds confidence. So those things are in a cycle. And sometimes you just have to say, I'm going to just muster up this much confidence to take some small action. It doesn't have to be huge action, but it has to be something. And taking that action will build confidence for you to try something the next time. And so don't get into the confidence trap of waiting for confidence to happen. Take action first so that you can get that confidence. Also, being real is better than being perfect, right? Most people recognize authenticity and are endeared to it and are connected to it versus someone who is fake or someone who feels like, I don't know, something's not right about that, or I just don't feel I know them, like they're just a fake version of themselves. Being you is enough. And you don't have to be perfect to be really, really good. You don't have to show up all polished to be really memorable or really interesting or make a great connection. And there's a beautiful quote that says, perfect is the enemy of good. And I love this so much because I think when we try for perfection, we are always going to fail. And you don't have to be perfect, again, to be really, really good. Like tonight will not be perfect, but it will be the best that I have in this moment. I'm going to give it my all. And then I'll go to bed tonight being like, I did the best I could in that moment. It doesn't have to be perfect to be really, really good. And neither do you. And that is something that you might have to put on auto repeat in your mind, especially when we get anxious. So what I'd like to do now is give you some of my top tips for networking and help you think about ways that maybe you can bring networking into this next stage of your educational career or your professional life. I know all of you are in different kind of stages as you come into this program. And when you think about networking, it shouldn't be something that you have to like really wait for till you're ready to get a job. Like networking right now could be about internships. It could be about what classes would be best for you to pursue, to take. It would be connections to talk to people in fields that you might want to go into. It could be opportunities to come. We're having the career day next Saturday, when we're going to talk with different people and be in person and have an opportunity to network. Just be opening your mind to what is possible for you. And again, it doesn't have to be in service of anything even specific, other than growing your network, other than thinking about how can I make connections that matter. So the top tips that I want to give you, the very first tip is start small. You don't have to do all the things all at once, sign up for everything, and then, be a masterful networker by tomorrow. You can just start small. You can pick one event to go to. You can pick one person to maybe talk to. Let's say you're in a class and you think someone's really cool or has some interesting ideas and you haven't mustered up the courage to talk to them. Maybe starting small, like, I'm going to network with this person tonight. I'm going to create a connection. I'm going to ask them a question. Maybe it's staying after class to talk to a professor. Maybe it's hanging out in a study group and asking a question. Maybe it's some combination of those. But when you think about networking, you can just start small. But if you start small, you have to start though. So don't think about, I won't start till I'm fully ready. I won't start till there's a big conference. You can start small, but just start. And for some of you, that might be even just making the business card, to have a card that says like your name, your address, or your name and your email address and your phone number, or your social media contacts. That might be a small step that you get away for people to contact you, but start somewhere. And then also, when you think about starting to network, prepare ahead of time. Don't show up to an event without thinking of some crucial questions first. And those kind of questions can look like, when you think about like how you want to show up, sometimes you have to acknowledge either the talent you have or the things you're interested in before you get to an event. So you're not on the spot when someone says, what are you interested in? You're like, stuff with science. I mean, that could just come out if you're not thinking about, how do I want to show up? What do I want to say about what I'm interested in? And if someone says, what's your skill area? What's your focus? Or what do you think you do well? It's good to think about your talents and your interests before you even talk to anyone. So you have kind of a running idea of what you might say in different situations that would keep you from getting tripped up in the moment and potentially putting your foot in your mouth as your brain is searching for the right words. So some questions you could ask yourself are, okay, what areas in this field interest you the most? You can even write them down and just say, like, oh, okay, I've never asked myself that. But what areas in the field of quantum physics interest you the most? What excites you about it? Like when you think about something that's interesting versus exciting, what do you get all, geeked out about that you're like, oh, this is so cool? Or the reason I chose this field, the reason I like it, or this part of it, what gets you excited? People love to talk about things that get them excited. What excites you? Also, what things are you good at? What things do you just get that you know that you like, this is a skill that I have? And then how would you like to contribute to the field? What pushes you to be here? How do you see yourself contributing? And again, on the face of it, probably no one's going to say like, what would you like to contribute to the field of quantum physics? But when someone says, what do you think you want to pursue? Or what track do you think you want to be on? It's so good to be like, well, here's how I think I could contribute, or here's what I'm excited about. So you can use these again, if your brain already has essentially primed the pump to be like, okay, I have some ideas that are already thought out. I don't have to think about them. And then I could just articulate them, because these are the kind of conversations you'll be having when you're networking with people. Also, what do you hope for? What do you hope for this field? What do you want to see from what ideas would you hope would happen? Again, anything that builds future hope, excitement, motivation, people like to hitch onto that. It's an easy way to connect with people. What are you excited about? What do you hope for? Also, when you think about networking, being prepared is so helpful. And there's this quote that I love that says, we don't rise to the level of the occasion, we fall to the level of our training. And if you have no training, you fall pretty low. And if you could be at least prepared in some way, it's so helpful to think, okay, I have some training. I'm prepared in some way for this. So when you think about being prepared, there's both ways to be formally prepared and informally prepared, but for informal events. So if you're going to a formal event and you know it's a networking event, think about, okay, what is the event that I'm going to? Is it the right format for me? Is this a good, like, what do I need? How do I need to dress? What do I need to be? Like, how long will it be? Like, what is the actual event? And then you think, what people will be in the room? Because then when you know what people will be in the room, you can think about, okay, what kind of things would I want to talk to them about? It's probably different if it's people who, let's say you're going to a networking event with people who are already in a field or all your professors versus a networking event for students who want internships. It's a different kind of event. So you have to prepare for it a little bit differently. And then you have to ask yourself, why am I going? What do I want to get out of this? Because that will help drive your conversations. I'm going to meet people who know about this. I'm going to make connections with people in my field. I'm going to practice my networking skills. I'm going to really pay attention to what questions people ask so I can get good at thinking about my answers. Like whatever comes up, thinking about these things ahead of time will calm your brain down. So when you're in that situation, you have some ideas already in place. And then you have to ask yourself, do I have cards? Because inevitably, someone's going to say, oh, I'd love to put you in contact with so-and-so. Oh, do you want to connect on, social, wherever? Do you have a card? And you do not need to have a job to have a business card. You can go on any website to like print business cards, Vistaprint. You could have cards tomorrow. You could pick a cute logo, put your name, your email, and your phone number and your social on there. If you like, be careful with social, because sometimes if it's just a personal page, you don't want everyone seeing what you're doing on there. So make it for a business page. But if you want a contact information, like that's still the easiest way to do it, is someone will say, do you have a card? So just go get them printed out and have them in your wallet. I can't tell you the number of times people will be having formal and informal conversations where someone say, oh, do you have a card? I'm like, yes, I do. And it's just, we still do that. It's still how we collect information. It's still how we like connect with people. So have some business cards and get them ready for the event on the 11th, if you don't have any yet. Also, when you think about informal opportunities, when you meet someone informally, you can be thinking in your brain, what's my connection to this person? Like, what is my connection either in the field or things I'm interested in or things I want to do? And then you think, okay, where's the opportunity? Can they help me? Can I help them? Can I offer them a referral for something? Can they offer me something? Where's the opportunity in this meeting for us to further along our interest? And identifying that can be really helpful. And then you have to ask yourself, is this person maybe a now person or maybe a later person? Sometimes we don't network with people because we think, well, I don't need what they have. They're doing something totally different. You might need them later. You never know. That's why opening your network to so many people, you may meet people now who later down the line be like, oh, I should go talk to that person again, because that's where I am now. You might need them now, and the purpose is very clear, but you might need them later. So don't discount potential connections, because you never know when you might need them. And then you have to ask yourself, do I have cards? Like, put them in your wallet, put them in your backpack. You might use a bunch, you might use just a couple, but they're cheap and they're a way to connect with people. And when I see you all at the event on the 11th, I'm sure going to say, hey, do you have a card? I'm sure you're going to hear that too. So practice having a card or something to give people so we can have your contact information. So be prepared for both formal opportunities and informal opportunities. And again, when you can think through this, your brain's like, oh, I can handle this. I have some ways to think about it. I'm prepared. And then it makes you able to really engage in the moment rather than engage in like whatever you're thinking about, being present with whatever's happening. Also, keeping an open mind is huge, not only about the situation that you might be facing, but about yourself. Like some people will say to themselves, oh, I'm just not good at this, or this isn't my skill set, or I'm an introvert and I can't because, or whatever you're saying to yourself. And that's none of that is true. It's just words you're saying to yourself. If you think about this idea, what if you could have a mind opened by wonder, about what's possible for you rather than closed by belief, right? Like when sometimes you believe things about yourself that just aren't true or that don't serve you. What does it serve you to say, like, I'm not good at this? That just reinforces a behavior you don't want to reinforce. So you're like, I'm learning this. I'm working on this. I'm trying this. I'm stepping outside of my comfort zone. I don't have to do everything, but I'm just going to do something. So you keep an open mind about yourself and what's possible. Then you keep an open mind about situations. Sometimes I've gone into situations thinking it's going to be so great and I can't wait to meet these people. It's going to be some kind of, wonderful event, and it's horrible and it doesn't work out well, or it's not the right people, or it's not the right time, or whatever. It doesn't work. And other times I go to something that I don't think will be good, and it turns out to be amazing. Or I have random conversations with people. I was at a conference waiting at a coat check, and I had this fantastic conversation with someone who also does applied psychology. And she ended up being like a mentor for me and helping with my podcast. And literally we're just talking over coat checks. And in that relationship, I wasn't expecting anything other than chit-chatting. And that turned into a wonderful relationship. So when you think about keeping an open mind to like what might happen, what could happen, what's possible, but also what's possible for you. And again, I love this quote: have a mind open by wonder rather than one closed by belief. Sometimes you believe things about yourselves that are not true. That's just how it works. Also, when you go to an event, it is so important to be you. So if you're kind of awkward, be awkward. If you're more overt, be overt. You're going to keep it real so you don't have to fake it. You don't have to guess, how should I be tonight? You don't have to put on an act or a show. There are plenty of people in this world who will like what you have to offer. And when you think about being authentic, that means being you and showing up as yourself so that people get to know the real you, not some idea of you or some idea that you think you have to be in order to connect with people or to be liked or to not get rejected. You being you is better than any fake version of you that you can be. Notice in social situations, though, when we feel awkward or we feel anxious, that sometimes we feel like we have to have a persona that is really not us. So please remember that, especially when you're kind of getting outside of your comfort zone, there's a tendency to be something fake or something you're not. You being you is perfectly fine. And another really important part of thinking about when you think about networking is asking good questions. I find that so many people ask like instead of open-ended, we do closed questions. And here's a good example of an open versus closed. When someone says, "Do you want to marry me?" Yes or no. "Do you want to marry me?" Yes or no. Closed-ended question. Versus, "How would you feel about marrying me?" It was an open-ended question. So you have to think about, how can I ask questions that allow people to talk and expand on what they want to say and allow opportunity for connection. So, the typical thing that someone might say is, "Oh, what do you do?" And then let's say you and I are at a party and I'm a therapist and you're a quantum physics major. And I say, "What do you do?" And you say, "I'm a quantum physics major." And you say, "What do you do?" "I'm a therapist." And we look at each other and be like, cool. There might not be, I might think like, what is quantum physics and why is quantum in front of it? I'm so stupid. I can't even talk to that person. They're so smart. And you might think, oh my God, therapist, she's going to make me talk about my mom. And I'm sure she's going to have me crying in like 5 minutes and I'll probably have to lay on the couch. And who knows where that would go, right? So instead of those kind of things that keep people apart, you have to think about questions that bring us together. So a question that might elicit more response would be, what do you enjoy most about your current role? Then they could talk about so many things, and you don't have to talk about necessarily, well, you could talk about, well, in my job, I do this, but in my current role, I do this. Or there's ways to say, like, this to me is much more thoughtful question that could have elicit deeper response, would allow you to contribute, that wouldn't shut off the conversation. So think about when you show up to situations, how can I ask open-ended questions, thoughtful questions that encourage the other person to talk, and things that don't shut us down based on our perceptions or stereotypes about each other. Also, when you're thinking about talking with people, try to maintain a focus. Sometimes when you think about networking, it's like, what do you do? Okay, what do I do? All right, then that's it. And then what do you do on the weekends? And where are you going next? And it can just spiral into some things that you're like, wait, what are we actually talking about? And the thing is, when you focus, you're trying to stay on point to the purpose of the conversation, like to make a connection. So when you're focused, it means like you stay on topic, you stay about the person you're talking with, you don't necessarily just go in and launch all about yourself. You stay on point to the event, to why you're there, to the topic that they bring up, so that you can further the conversation and not just be like, what are we even talking about now? Okay. And part of that involves having really good listening skills. And when you think about what most of us do in conversations, and we think about communication, we're really doing this. The biggest communication problem is that we do not listen to understand. We instead listen to reply. And we're usually, the human brain, what we do is someone talks, and as you're talking, I'm thinking in my mind of, I'm cataloging, what do I have about my experiences that I can say next? How does this relate to what that person's saying? And instead of listening to them, I'm thinking about my reply as they're speaking. And you can see this sometimes. Have you ever noticed someone almost cuts you off? You're talking and they're like, yes, and I did this too, or like without even letting you finish your thought. So notice how your thinking is working when someone is communicating. And I think this picture is pretty much universal when we're having conversations. I'm going to talk about me, and I'm going to talk about me. Everyone's going to talk about themselves. And you want to set yourself up for more success than this. This is a pretty low bar. So what I want you to think about is, what would active listening look like? If I'm engaged in a conversation with someone and I'm actively listening, it means I'm thinking about what they're saying and I'm letting the whole thought go through. And then I'm thinking like how I can contribute to that, not totally take us off topic or not turn it about myself, but how can I actively listen to what they're saying? And so when you do active listening, there's something called support versus shift. And when you support, it's like adding another piece to the puzzle. And when you shift, it's like taking something away, or it's like, and now for something different. So like, here's an example. When you're doing a shift in a conversation, it moves the subject from the person you're interacting with to you. So you're shifting what's going on and you're making it about you. So here's an example of what that looks like. Your friend maybe just says, hey, I just finished playing baseball with some friends at the park. And you say, oh, I was a big baseball player in high school, but I haven't played since I hurt my knee. Now, this is a pretty innocuous conversation, right? But look at what you've just done. So your friend's like, I just finished playing baseball with some friends at the park. Then when you respond with something that happened in the past that they could connect, like, oh, we both played basketball, but I haven't played since I hurt my knee. And then now we're talking, is your knee okay? And what did you do to your knee? And was that the point of the conversation? So to think about, are you supporting the conversation or are you shifting it? Right. And when you think about what you just did, what would you say when you had, again, we'll go back to this response. I was a big baseball player in high school, but I haven't played since I hurt my knee. What do you think you're doing? Are you relating to them? Are you furthering the conversation, shifting focus on yourself, or moving the conversation in an entirely different direction? Just in the chat box, what would you say you're doing in this conversation, if that were your answer? Yes, David, I agree with you. When you think about what we're doing in this, we think we're relating to people when we do this because we're thinking baseball, and that's the common subject, but we're not relating to the way they brought up the subject. And we're not actually furthering the conversation. When we do that, we're then shifting the focus to us, and then we're taking it in such a different way because now we're going to talk about the injury. And so when you think about that, it's not necessarily bad, but what could you say instead to support versus shift the conversation? Like, what are things that you would actively maybe say to think, I want this conversation to keep going and I want to be in support of the conversation? And that would take some intentional thinking on your part. So you might say something like, oh, really? Which park do you play at? And that would give them the opportunity to say, oh, near my house. Oh, where do you live? Like, keep it going that way. Or you could say, that sounds like fun. What position are you? Oh, I'm outfield. Oh my gosh, I was outfield too. That's so cool. Or, oh, I always played shortstop. appreciate the outfielders, man, whatever you're going to say. Or how often do you meet up to play? Which again, open-ended, inviting them to talk more, expanding on that. We meet every Tuesday with our friends. Oh, that sounds cool. How long have you been doing that for? Like, it's just a way to expand upon it. And so again, it's not, every conversation doesn't work this way, but especially when you're thinking about networking, shifting versus supporting is really important to think about, because you want to be in service of the conversation, not about what you want, but about the conversation needs to keep going that would help the person express themselves, that would get deeper, that would make a better connection, a more thoughtful connection. So when you do support, you're keeping the focus on the person you're interacting with, their ideas or their experience. And I find that people really like to talk about themselves. So if you can get in a conversation with someone and get them talking about them and their interests, there's so many more things you can latch on and relate to than if you're trying to guess what they want to talk about or guess what would be interesting to them. Like, let them tell you, ask them some good open-ended questions, like help them further the conversation, make it easy for them. Also, when we think about how people communicate, there was a study done a while ago, and this person, I don't know how to say his last name correctly, so I'm just going to say Albert M. He did a study on what elements of communication are important to people. When we're communicating, what different elements are vital to like understanding communication or receiving communication or processing it. So what he said, essentially, there's a percentage of, when we as human beings, there's a percentage of what we take in communication. And he said there's a percentage of words we use that helps people to understand what we're saying. The percentages of tone of voice, like that matters in helping us understand. And there's body language. And so he did these studies where, and again, this has been refuted or supported by different studies, but I thought what was interesting about it was how different the percentages were. Because most of us think, well, the highest percentage of how we communicate is the words we use, right? Well, what he found out is that no, it's just 7%. The words we use are approximately 7% of how people receive our communication, whereas the tone of voice is 38%. When I think about that, someone saying, if you said, I'm really happy today, this has been a really great day, versus someone who says, I'm so happy today, it's been such a great day, or someone who says, I'm so happy today. Like, you know, whatever they're going to say, the tone of voice makes an impact. But even more than that, which I think is fascinating, is the fact that we think about body language was the biggest percentage of all, at 55%, that our body language is being read as part of our communication more than even the words we use. So when we think about this idea, why we need to think actively about body language, you could be communicating a whole separate, set of things. Your words and your tone could be saying one thing, but your body language could be saying something else. And that's part of being intentional when you network, is how are you showing up through your body language? And that's something you can actually control and think about. And it's very important and interesting to think about that, because that could shift how people interact with you. Or do you make it more comfortable to interact? Are you pushing people away? What are you saying with your body language? And when you think about body language, if you look at two people communicating, we have no idea what the topic is, but you can look at these two ladies and you can make up a whole story about what is happening. You can think of the topic that they're speaking on, the intensity, who's interested, who's not, like, is there a deep bond between them? What's going to happen next? Like, you can easily make up a story based on just what you see. You can also think about how when people look, we know certain ways by like eye contact, by the way our expression, like our eyebrows are raised or not, or how our jaw is set. And you could look, is someone emotional in this picture? Is someone expressing themselves? Is someone resistant? How do we know that? I mean, sometimes we're thinking, how do we posture ourselves when we're giving support versus when we're being vulnerable? Do we use eye contact in different ways? Is direct eye contact or indirect eye contact appropriate for this situation? And when you think about who's right and who's wrong, who's being ridiculous, we all know she's right and he's wrong, right, in this picture. But you can tell a story from people's body language, and you make that up based on how we are socialized and things that we perceive and things we just kind of know deep down. When you think about networking, body language is huge in terms of, am I approachable? And when you think about soft skills, such as a good handshake and eye contact when you meet someone, some of us have to practice that so we're not awkward. Some of us need to go to a friend and be like, how's my handshake? Is it too limp? Is it too strong? And when I give eye contact, is like, hello, am I being too intense? Like, how can I be natural? How can I be confident in what I'm doing? Sometimes people need to practice. A simple thing such as a handshake and a smile and eye contact don't come easily to everyone. So sometimes it's helpful to practice before you do it. And you'll have a lot of practice with people in your program and with someone like me on Saturday. You can practice those things, and don't think it's foolish to practice. A lot of people need help with that. Like, there's not many times we've like given handshakes and gotten feedback on that, or had someone say like, hey, your eye contact is pretty intense right when I meet you. So think about how you're approaching people, and I say like a handshake and a smile can do a lot for a connection. Also, when we think about how we show up, our nonverbal reinforcement is just as important as the words we say, what we don't say. So when you're talking with someone, nonverbal reinforcement looks like things like a head nod. So when someone's talking, are you like, yeah, I get you? There's a difference between saying, yeah, I get you, and like, so a head nod, like, are you paying attention? Are you with me? That's something we totally use in our culture, is a head nod. Also, when we think about nonverbal things, eye contact is so important. Is it, when people think about eye contact, sometimes like they'll bore into you, like, I'm really paying attention. And sometimes you need a softer gaze. Sometimes it's okay to be looking away. Like, how do you think about eye contact given the situation, given how much you know the person or not? You have to just think about that. People tend to say like, look them in the eye, give them good eye contact. And sometimes it can be creepy if you're too intense with it. So think about how you use your eye contact. Also, your posture when you're meeting somebody, when you're talking with them, is it more formal or informal? When you think about, are you slouchy? Are you standing straight? Like, are you sitting in a chair, like all laid back? Or are you sitting up? Like, what's your posture like? Your facial expression, you know how sometimes someone can say something and your facial expression will give it away? Like, someone will say, I heard that so-and-so did this, and you'd be like, and you didn't say anything, but your whole expression was like, oh my God, right? So you have to think, sometimes your facial expression might give away something you don't want to give away. So you have to really think like, what am I doing with my face right now as connected to my nonverbal reinforcement of something? Also, gesturing. Some of us, myself included, are big gestures. And when we talk, we like to gesture. Others of us, not so much. Sometimes people give advice though, be sure to gesture, like make big things. And then you just look like, if it's not you, don't make big gestures. Like, you don't have to gesture, but if you're a natural gesture, don't lock it in and think you have to be stiff either. It's about finding a balance. Also, your proximity, how close or how far away you are. Culturally, we tend not to like it when people are this close. We think about how much space is reasonable for you, also depending on the kind of conversation you're having with a group versus one-on-one versus at a side table, like how your proximity to the person will change based on your relationship, the topic, the environment. But think about that. And then also touch. Do you touch or not touch? So usually before COVID, we all thought shaking hands was great. Then COVID sometimes changed that. And so now we're like fist pump, elbow. Sometimes we're like this, like, so do we touch or not touch? Some people are huggers, some people are do not hug, and you have to just gauge how comfortable are you, how comfortable are they, and what are you going to do touching wise. A lot of times now, kind of post-pandemic, people are handshaking more, but I've seen people who are like more like, let's just do this, because they still don't want to do that. So you just have to see in different environments what's acceptable to you. And you might be thinking to yourself, oh my God, do I have to think about all this all the time when I go to networking? The answer is yes, you do, but it will become second nature once you start to be intentional about how you show up and to be your authentic self. So part of it is thinking like, what's the environment? How can I be intentional? And how can I be my authentic self? Like, how can you do all these things anyway, but it's just putting them kind of in a different environment. When you are networking, one of the most important things is to follow up. When you meet somebody or they give you some advice or they have a good conversation with you or anything, don't forget to follow up with them in some way. And it's pretty easy to do that. You can quickly send an email. It says, it was so great to meet you. Thank you so much. If you want to really impress someone, you could send a card if it's that kind of meeting. If someone put you in touch with someone else who got you a job, you might want to send them an actual thank you note. That's so impressive. You can send them an email too, though. And also you can connect on social media. Social media has made it so easy to connect and like get on someone's Instagram page or Facebook or LinkedIn. But here's the thing about that. You have to make it personal. You can't just do this. This is what I see so many times. Someone will get on LinkedIn and be like, I'd like to add you to my professional network on LinkedIn. They put zero thought in it. And it just makes me think like, wasn't I special to you or anything? And you could just take 30 seconds to be like, Carrie, it was so great to meet you at the quantum physics networking event. I loved your talk. Thanks so much for all the helpful advice. I hope to see you on Saturday. Love, Jim. Right. So I wouldn't put love, but sincerely. Right. But you could just say a little something about where you met, what you liked about that person. Thanks for the great recommendation on the book. I'm excited to get it. Appreciate your time. Just a little something that says, I can personalize this to you makes it stick way more than someone who sends this. You're just going to be then another number on someone's LinkedIn feed versus like, oh, that guy I talked about the article, or that guy who helped me with the recommendation to take this class, or whatever. You can take 2 seconds to make it personal. Okay. Also, if you said you were going to do something in a conversation, make sure you do it. So if you have a conversation with someone, I don't know, you're waiting in lunch in the cafeteria and you're talking about quantum physics and you're like, oh my gosh, I read this cool article by such and such, and it was really helping me think about maybe future career choices or this cool idea that's happening. And so I said, oh, what article? And you're like, oh, I'll send that to you. Make sure you do. Make sure you follow up so you're a person of your word. If you're going to send something or do something, hey, I know somebody you could talk to. I'd love to make that connection for you. Then make it, because that makes you a person of your word. And people want to trust you and want to believe that. And it makes it more of a believable relationship when you say what you'll do and you do it. So those are my tips on that. And when you think about what it takes to be successful as a networker, here's some of my top tips. Keep an open mind about not only yourself, but also other people and situations. You may be in awkward situations where you have to be like, I can figure this out, or I can do this. You may be with other people who you're like, didn't think would be helpful, and then they're incredibly helpful, or other people who you thought would be helpful that are not. It all gets mixed up together. And different situations may prove awesome. Some might be awkward. Some of you might be out of your league or feel like that. Others of you will be very comfortable. So just try to keep an open mind. It's not always going to be perfect, but remember, you don't have to be perfect to be really, really good. And neither does the situation. You can make things happen in all kinds of situations. Okay. Also, remember to have a clear purpose. Remember why you're doing this in the first place. Why are you intentionally thinking about networking in the first place? You want to grow your network. You want to expand the people that you know, the ideas that you have, the possibilities. Their purpose is to make connections. That's why you're doing this. Even if it's a little awkward, you're doing it for a purpose. It's not for nothing. And it's not just to like torture yourself. Also, being proactive, seek out some opportunities to meet new people. And again, it doesn't have to be everyone at a conference. It could be the person sitting next to you in class. It could be the person lying with you at the bookstore. It could be the person who's also signed up for that student event that you're going to go to. It could be your professor. You want to ask something that you've never bothered to, be brave enough to go up and talk to him after class. So when you think about this idea of seeking out opportunities, doesn't have to be everything, but do something. Do something a little different that helps you think about, I'm going to expand my network today. And then be thoughtful about the types of connections you want to make. When you think about this, idea, sometimes you think like, I have to meet all the people and all the places and do all the opportunities. And sometimes you're like, well, what am I really interested in right now? What might help me in this moment? So yes, I could do all these things, but right now, what kind of connections am I looking to make that would be the most helpful to where I am? Knowing there's opportunities out there later, be just thoughtful. Like, is this event maybe good for you right now, or maybe good for later? Or do you have to push yourself to try to meet as many people as you can, or would you rather make a few really good connections? So just be thoughtful about that and think for yourself, what am I looking to do? What kind of connections do I want to make? In what way? Just ask yourself that. And then in our presentations, Shannon and I are doing this thing called the Big Five, that for all of ours, like resumes, cover lettering, interviewing, and networking, that we're encouraging you to think about the big 5 takeaways. And what we're saying is the big 5 takeaways. The first one is, don't make it easy for people to say no, which basically means like, be open to thinking about being prepared. So making it easy for people to say no means like in your resumes and cover letters, like having mistakes on there, like not checking it, not editing it, and thinking about with networking, not being prepared to have something to say, right? Or not showing up with some amount of willingness to engage. Also, personalizing and preparing are huge, no matter which of the 4 topics we're talking about. Personalize it to the situation and be prepared. Very important. Also, the details matter when you think about that, for sure, in resumes and cover letters, but also when you think about networking and interviewing, the details of how you show up and the things I've shared with you tonight will matter in making a difference in how you show up. It gives you that little bit of an edge when you think about those tiny details. Also, being authentic. Do not be something that you're not. Do not try to be something. People gravitate towards authenticity and vulnerability more than they will to bravado or showmanship or whatever you want to call it. So being authentic is so important, and avoiding the confidence trap is huge. Waiting for something to happen for you to get confident, you're going to be waiting for a long time. Sometimes you have to take action and then the confidence comes. So these are the big 5 that we're using in all of our presentations that we think would be the most helpful for you as takeaways. And then the next thing that we're doing is interview skills. So that's the next class that I'll be teaching. And that's going to be, we're going to do Monday at 6:30 and Thursday at 12:30. So we're kind of switching up the format and times a little bit. But, and these will all be recorded and they'll be on the QRX website. So you can, if you can't make it, they'll be there. And then we're going to hang out at Quantum Professionals Day on November 11th. So this would be a great opportunity for you to come up to me when you see me, or Shannon, and shake hands, chat about what you thought about this, ask a good open-ended question, and practice. I'm telling you right now, I would love to practice networking with you. And so we'll see you on November 11th. You might even want to make some business cards and practice handing them out. That would be a cool idea. But just think about what you want to do in that day and how you could use that. If you've never networked before, you think, well, maybe on this day, I'll try. And I'll be there in person, ready to network with you. So I'm going to stop the share. That is the end of my formal presentation. And I'm trying to honor your time. We're just 2 minutes away. So I'll stay on for any questions or anything else. And otherwise, I hope you have a great night. I'm going to stop recording too.